Welcome to the Coach's Table Podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education. What is going on, everybody? Today is a beautiful day, halfway through May. It is getting hotter and hotter outside. For those of you that are in the South, these next couple of months are going to be brutal, really through like September, but that's okay. It's great. We got seasons wrapping up, and a lot of things going on. College football training is about to start again. So June for everybody, as we all know, is about to be really busy, but super excited for the conversation today. And here's really why, because there's a lot of things that we're going to kind of cover. And it's going to be interesting. And the gentleman that I have is also a fellow podcaster, which is fantastic. And he's got a very successful podcast, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. Before I introduce him, guys, just like always, look, if you get one of three things or one of a couple of things through this, okay, if you get educated, if you get entertained, okay, if you get encouraged, all that we ask is you share the show. Okay, it's straight value exchange. The show is growing. We are continuing to get more and more listeners every single day because of you guys sharing the show. So all that I ask is that you share the show. If you're on Spotify, it takes literally 10 seconds for you to leave a review, and it takes 10 seconds for you to share the show with somebody that you think can benefit from it. If you're on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube because the full-length episode is on YouTube, do us a huge favor, hit the subscribe button, and then drop a comment below. Okay, we're growing on YouTube just as much as we're growing on Spotify and Apple as well. So guys, if you would, please share the show. We bring you great guests, and all that we ask is you share the show. With that, and further ado, Mr. Jonmarc Rasberry, what's going on, man?
Hey, Kendrick. It's awesome to be on, man, and I appreciate you, let me jump on this pod, man, be behind the mic and all that good, wonderful stuff, man.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And, I appreciate, you coming on too. And, we were kind of chatting before, but it's great to, people that are continuing to podcast or doing podcasts, it's always great to have them on too. And, you have a really successful podcast and it's growing as well. Tell people what it is so they can go listen to it. And then also, like, how did you kind of get started with that?
So, in the field of strength conditioning, I always wanted to be a little bit different. I didn't want to fall in the mold that most coaches go into, right? Everyone could talk about strength stuff. Everyone could talk plyometrics. Everyone could talk about speed training. Everyone could talk about methods and principles and, recite the essentials textbook from front cover to back cover. And I just didn't want to be that way. I want to be a little bit different. And the way I could be different is, put myself out there and provide content out to the industry of strength and conditioning. So how could I have done that? One was I had the idea of having a blog, and the blog then eventually became the Conjugate Chats. But the blog was supposed to be like all my thoughts and opinions and whatever else that I wanted to bring out into the field of strength conditioning. It was just supposed to be like highlighting coaches and bringing ideas and bringing value to the industry. That was the whole premise behind the blog. And then eventually that blog became the Conjugate Chats, and then it became a podcast, and then it just took off from there, and it's been remarkable, man. I never thought myself as a podcaster. Most people don't really know that I'm not big on I'm a big introvert. So doing something where I'm constantly talking to people and constantly, in communication with whoever is going to be on, the podcast, and as best as I do, that communication is huge, and you got to put yourself out there and stuff like that, and it's just been different. It's been awesome, man.
Yeah, dude, it's really cool how you can take a simple concept and have so much, whether you want to call it influence or impact or the ability to reach people on something so simple as hitting a record button, and literally that's it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the fun part, because the reason why it's fun because you actually get to talk to people and learn about them and get to know them. And that is the really fun part, because we're so people driven, and we long for the communication. We long for the connection. That's what people that's why like humans kind of exist. Like we have connections with each other. And pretty similar to you, that's kind of why I started too. But mine was more like instead of arguing on whatever social media platform, I feel that we have so much more in common than we do disagreements. And so, like, let's just sit down and talk because I bet we have so much more in common. And so that was kind of the birth and aspect of like, well, I was like, well, let's just do this. And it's crazy how amazing it is and amazing it's been, and how great people are. Like, that's a central theme that I've really, really, really like have consistently seen is like how great people are.
Honestly, yeah, I agree with that because like, and I agree with your statement that we probably have a lot more in common than we do, differences. And I talked to several people, and you know about as good as I know, with your guests and stuff like that. You start to get to know them a little better,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the one thing I think that's like there's just a common thing. We all have a common theme between us. We want to help people. We want to improve development or performance, and we are people driven, like you said. So
Yeah, and so you like with that, I think that's kind of why everybody gets into coaching too. But you particularly like you're at the high school level, and right now I think everybody knows this or sees this or high school strength and conditioning. I think a lot of people kind of look at it as I don't want to say an easy way, a button or easy thing because it's very difficult. It's actually probably to a certain extent more difficult at times than the collegiate realm, right? Because if you look at the sheer like load of the number of teams that you guys have to do, whether it's boys and girls, and it's like that's a lot of programming. Now I think you guys do a great job of like simplifying things to then be like, okay, like we don't need to go super deep or complex because it's maybe more development, right? Walk us through like what a typical day of high school strength and conditioning looks like. I've talked to several before, but it's so interesting and intriguing. People think it's an entry level job, but it's really not. Like it's really, really not.
So I want to start by the premise that I'm also a school teacher during the
Yeah.
day, and then I go and do like strength and conditioning afterwards. So my day is a little bit different than someone like Cody Hughes or some of these other guys that are, directors of strength and conditioning at their schools and stuff like that. So my schedule's a little different. Right now, I'm a biology teacher. I teach 6 periods of biology. We have 7. We're on period schedule. So my planning period is 7th period, and that's where I mostly do most of my strength and conditioning stuff. I'm also a football coach and a head track coach as well. So, I've done the strength and conditioning for our football team, our track team. I just got done with the baseball team and softball team this season, and thank the Lord that no one got any shoulder injuries this season from both softball or baseball. So, it was awesome on that front there. If you want to talk about like strength and conditioning at the high school level, it's very much the opposite end of entry level.
Sure.
So when I talked to Tobias Jacoby, he's at Strong Rock Christian Academy, I believe in Georgia, and he described it as this. He said to a bunch of college strength coaches, said, "Think about the worst athlete you've ever worked with. The worst." Said, "All right, you got that in your mind? That's my best at the high school. Now program for that and everyone that's underneath."
Mm.
So I'm just like that statement's so true because we got, and especially if you're in situations like you're a 6th grade to 12th grade school,
Yeah.
like you got to learn how to develop a 6th grader, for 6 more years in their athletic development, and they're going through puberty, they're going through hormonal changes that are out the ass, man. Like it is absolutely crazy because you'll see this little 6th grader that's like 3'9", and by the time they're a sophomore, was that 5 years?
Yeah.
They're like 6'3", gained about 40 pounds of muscle without even trying. So I mean, it's a challenge, but it's also really fun at the same time. Like you get to see development just in a 6 year span, you get or a 4 year span if you're dealing with just strictly the high school, not just the middle school either. It's really fun, man. But like, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but got off a
Yeah.
little tangent there.
So no, yeah, absolutely. I think that's something too is like my experience, I was very fortunate. I had an amazing high school strength and conditioning coach, who I'm still, very, very good friends with to this day. He's been on the podcast, but I learned coaching from him, inadvertently, if you will, without even knowing it, right? And now that I'm a little bit older, mature, and I can reflect back upon it, I'm like, yo, he's really good. Like he's really, really, really good. Um, I guess so. When you guys talk about development, what comes to my mind, obviously, is like, yeah, the lifting component, but I'm also thinking like coordination is a huge thing at the high school level because of literally everything you just talked about. How you could have a sixth grader all the way up to a senior, and some of them look like a baby giraffe running, walking, jumping, and then some people may or may not throw Olympic lifting in there. And it's like, well, if they can't even skip, maybe we don't, maybe we do. I don't know. And so I'm interested from a high school strength coach perspective, where you guys kind of where you put a lot of your stock in, if you will. Obviously, when you get stronger, yep, that's going to happen. But you know, is it more coordination based? Do we need to be doing one rep maxes? Like, very interested from that standpoint. I can only speak upon my experience and a couple of people that I've talked to, but from your perspective, like, where do you kind of put the majority of your stock in?
So I put a lot of like what I believe into movement quality,
Yeah,
right? So I really want our athletes to move really, really well in whatever that we give them, whether that's a skip, whether that's a jog, a crawl, a push, a pull, a hinge. I want them to move really, really well. So you want to talk about coordination stuff. I incorporate a lot of games into what we do as well. Part of our job is to get them be better movers, get them stronger, and everything like that. So that's the name of the game. It's always been the name of the game.
of course.
However, they're in a very crucial part of their life to where, you know, they're signing up for sports. They're not signing up for your strength and conditioning program. They're signing up for sports. They want to have fun.
Yeah,
So how do you incorporate things like I want to get movement quality, I want their strength to go up, I want coordination, I want mobility, flexibility, and also have fun at the same time. And I think that's where you got to be a little bit creative as a coach as well, because you got to blend those two things together.
yeah,
A couple of things that I've seen that I've done myself, I incorporate games, relays. You're now they're not thinking, oh, it's a conditioning drill. Oh,
yeah,
this is whatever.
yeah,
Now it's I'm going to beat my partner's ass. Like I'm going to get after it today,
yeah,
and that's only increasing as time goes on. So I got done with a call with another straight coach here in Tennessee, and he had the opportunity to bring VPT into his program.
yeah,
And so they began to do like I think 3 or 5 rep maxes on front squats. And they're coming at each other like, well, I just got 0.35, whatever,
yeah,
what you get, all that's 3 point, that's stuff like that. Like competition is being instilled into the program.
yeah,
And I think that's what drives and what keeps us or keeps them coming back.
yeah.
And starts to have that I'm not gonna say edge, but like
Sure.
just a little bit of fire underneath them. And I mean, that's just the whole premise of strength and conditioning. And, you know, and we also get results that way too. So pretty fun.
It's interesting because like at the collegiate level, like I play games all the time. Like honestly, and it's in our human nature to play, right? Like it really is. And so it's like, why restrict that? Like why restrict playing? Why restrict having fun? Like we can still accomplish the things we need to accomplish while we're doing this, or actually through that means. And so I play games all the time. Simple tag games, crazy. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah, man. And what's great about it, and people don't talk about this enough because I think at times we want to be so business. What's great about it is watching them laugh and smile and giggle and talk crap and all that stuff that comes with it because it just increases the competitive nature. And the VBT stuff, I love VBT. I think it makes life 1,000 times easier. But what I love about it is the instant feedback you get. And so, like you just said, like they're saying, "Hey, I hit this, meters per second." Like that drives competition. Like that, it's like, can you do the same weight and beat me? And now, like, yeah, we can get into the intricacies of like RSI and like weight and all this other stuff, but like just that nature in itself, just take that for what it is. Like if you zoom out, like the fun component of like just challenging each other to be better and to say like I'm going to move it faster or whatever the case may be, like we should really cherish that because I don't think we get that at times enough.
I agree, and that's one thing I learned very early on in like my coach experience, and especially being a strength coach. Like, when I first wanted to be a strength coach, I thought it was like the hard ass person that you don't smile, you're going sleeveless every single
Yeah,
day, you're yelling, screaming, whatever. And
yeah,
when I got to the high school realm and tried to do that, I mean, and people know me, well, it doesn't work that way at all. And so, like, when I was sitting there screaming at kids, I mean, and I telling myself a little bit because, like, that's part of my growth,
sure,
right? I had this idea of a strength coach in my head, and the reality of what it was, it didn't match up. And
sure,
I'm sitting there like, why does these kids hate me and don't do the things I ask them to do? It's like, well, they hate to be around you. It's like,
yeah.
got it. And so my approach to strength and conditioning just totally flipped. So yeah,
Well, I also think though too, like that's the point of like just like being authentically you. Like, don't try and be something you're not. You know what
right.
I'm saying? And like, if you're a yeller and a screamer, okay, right? But like, do it in a modified manner. And what I mean by that is like, if you're just yelling just to be loud, I disagree with that. But if you're like cueing an entire room and you actually have a point to what you're saying, then fine. But like, you have to learn to use that stuff sparingly. And if all you're doing is yelling like all the time, when you actually need to make a point, nobody will listen because they're just gonna be like, that's John. Nope, nope, I'm not listening. Like they just tune you out.
They
But if
become numb.
yeah, it does, right? Like it literally does. And so it's like, but if you are just yourself and then like you don't need to be soft spoken and whispering, but if you're yourself, and then when you do elevate your volume or your tone, they're like, oh crap, like he's serious. Like he actually means that. Um, you get so much more from that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And talking about like a personality inside the weight room, like I'm very much like an intricate person. So like Akil asked me, it's like, why are we front squatting? Why instead of back squatting? Like why? It's like, okay, do you want the real answer or do you want the long answer or do you want the like condensed down version? So, they don't mean by that, but like you said, if things kind of get serious or there's always a time and place for everything. So
Of course, yeah, 100%. And like that's a great point. Like, do you want the real answer or do you want the condensed answer? And I would imagine with high school, you're giving them a lot of the condensed answers. Yeah, like here, let me give you the 30-second skinny real fast, right? We do the same thing in college. Like there's probably, let's say, of a group of like maybe 30, maybe two guys want like the intricate detailed answer, right? But I always will give them the 30-second skinny. Here's the why. Here's the so what. Here's why it's important to you. Because athletes will do more when they know why.
agreed.
Coaches, people will do more when we know why. Not just athletes, but coaches and people as well. So if we give them that, it'll get so much farther. So much farther.
Agreed. Agreed for sure, man.
Yeah, man, it's crazy, isn't it? But okay, okay, as strength and conditioning has developed, and I think we're doing well, all this stuff, but sports science has emerged. I love sports science just as probably as much, if not more than other people. I think tech is great. I know we should not be reliant upon it. And I agree with that. I think it's fantastic, though. I really, really do. What does sports science from a high school standpoint look like? Because from a collegiate standpoint, it's we're integrating 5 or 6 pieces of technology, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of data points. What does that look like from a high school standpoint?
So I define sports science as like making logical decisions from the data that you're actually obtaining. So this has really been increased in the last probably about 5 years in high school strength and conditioning, at least from what I've seen, and I've only been in here since 2020. So I've kind of seen it kind of develop over the last couple of years, and it's really gone up there. It's just passed beyond Google Sheets. And right, people ask me questions about Google Sheets. How can I pull up one rep maxes? How can I do this? How can I integrate this? It's like, okay, cool. I love Google Sheets the next, as much as the next person, but it's
Really?
what we
I think Google Sheets is garbage. I'm not gonna lie.
what?
Yeah, and here's why. I'm so I'm so used to Excel
Okay.
that relearning where everything's at on Google Sheets, I'm just like, dude, get out of here. Like, like, let me just upload my Excel rather than, like, let me just upload it to a OneDrive and be good to go. I also have another tool that I use that I love way better than any Excel sheet could ever provide. But you love Google Sheets, and so does everybody else. So, uh, let's go with Google Sheets. I'm just like, ah, man.
Yeah, man. Hang on.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Okay, so
I'll edit that, so you're good.
okay, sweet. So, with Google Sheets, right? We had a little dispute. So, with Google Sheets, I mean, it's just a tool in the toolbox.
Yeah.
That's all it really is.
Yeah.
But it's not so much like Excel or Google Sheets that really matters. It's what you do with the data that actually drives your decisions, right? So if we are seeing like an increased rate of injuries and specific things like your shoulders and hips, joints or ligaments, tendons, whatever, you can look back at the program and say, did I overload an athlete, at any given point of the off season, preseason, even in season? If you have a good in season program, it should be complementary to what you did in the off season and preseason. So you can look at that kind of things, right? You can take a look at load, how many reps. If you did 10 sets of 10, that probably means that you need to go back and, change some things. With the increase of things like GPS, right? So you can take a look at the actual mileage on an athlete. How far have they ran? What's their top speed? How many yards did they run in practice yesterday? Do we need to lighten up a little bit? How are they feeling? As well as taking things like wellness surveys for athletes. Are you sore? What's your mental state right now? How stressed are you? What's your mood? It's not so much like the data itself, it's what you do with the data itself. So in high school, I think it's an important concept that we need to master almost, because the fact is that these high school athletes are constantly changing, with their hormones, and one day they could be on top of the world because their girlfriend told them that they love them, and then the next day they break up. It's just stuff like that, man. Like, and being able to pull that data and say, okay, this is where I need to change. And you can, and high school coaches need to be flexible too, because like coaches in general need to be flexible.
Yeah.
But being able to be flexible, say, okay, I can change this program just a little bit, and here's a product of that.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's an important concept, and it's definitely increased over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, are you doing like daily wellness questionnaires? I can imagine with the volume of athletes in one person, like maybe not. Is it just a conversation you're having with them? What does that look like for you guys?
So I do have like a QR code. I posted a little bit back on Twitter about months ago. I printed out a QR code, and so basically they can go to their phone, go to the camera app, and then hover above it, and they can click the link, and it brings them to a form, and that form goes into my sheets, and then it pulls like the data from there, so I can pick out the day and the person and look at like their wellness for that day. So um, what I'm going to do from this point on is look at it like if we have a 3 rep max days. I don't have one RM. I know that's off topic, but we do 3 rep maxes, and I'm going to see a correlate. I'm going to try to see a correlation between our KPIs and our wellness survey.
Sure.
If someone doing they got fives or everything, they're 100% ready to go. They're probably going to do a little bit better than little Johnny who just got broken up 20 minutes ago, and his wellness survey says that he's like at 20% for the day. So
Right, right. And I mean, I gotta imagine the difficulty to have all your athletes like consistently fill those out is just a struggle. It's
yeah,
almost like herding cats to be like, look, dude, just fill out. It's going to take 10 seconds of your life. I promise you, just fill this out. because I feel like that's where the tough part is, especially at the high school level, right? And especially if you're not a full time strength and conditioning, like that's all you're doing. Like you're teaching biology 6 periods of the day. For me, for like college strength and conditioning, and when we do our health and wellness questionnaires, my concern at the high school level would be like getting them to fill out their freaking daily wellness questionnaire, and it's got to be like herding cats because I struggle even at the collegiate standpoint with much smaller numbers. I mean, I do pretty well for that, but like there's always people onesies or twosies that aren't filling it out. And if you're doing like a 7 day rolling average, a 14 day, a 21 day, a 3 day, you're like, dude, you need to fill this out because it's just messing everything else up. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And, I try to simplify like what we do as well because kids don't need it being very complex. And I
Yes.
tell them, it's like, look, there's a QR code. You hover your phone over it, you click the low link, you just fill out the form. And I even made it to where you have a drop down list of finding your name on the form. Like instead of sitting there typing just like stuff like that, man. And it's a little challenging. It's a little daunting some days
Yeah.
because kids don't really, they're like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. It's like, okay, I don't care if it's stupid. Do it because I asked you to do it and I care about your well being. So,
Yeah, and like for them, like because they're not seeing the larger picture at times with it, they're like, this is dumb. And if you are doing health and wellness questionnaires, the point that you just made, I think people might overlook that. But like to reduce athletes not filling it out, make it so them filling it out is easy. Make the drop down list, have buttons. If they have to, and I know that this is so minuscule, but it goes a long way. But if they have to manually type, it's seen as more effort on their part and they're less likely to do that. But if they just click and they have to find, like, they just click and their name pops up, or if they, whatever the case may be, I know it sounds so minuscule because trust me, I get it, but it reduces their energy and mental capacity of it, and they will actually have a higher percentage fill out than having them manually type in stuff like all the time.
I agree with that. And because, like, I think I'm even going to get to a point to where I have a drop down menu of our maxes. Like, if you did 300 for 3 rep, right? Go back to the 3 rep
Yeah,
example. If you did 300, 315, like go down, scroll to find your number, click it, and then go. Like click and go, man.
yeah. It just makes it easier. Like everything should be button styles. Like they just have to click a button, a scale, like provide visuals. Like if you're doing these, it's I know it seems tedious to us because we're like, just fill it out. But if you like do these things, it will help them correlate that, and it'll help them be like, okay, cool. Like, yes, my quads are sore, and I can click on the quads, and that's what it, highlights. Like whatever the case may be. Um, it sounds so goofy, but at a high school level, collegiate level, if I'm being honest with you, the less I need them to do, and the easier I can make their experience, more convenient, the higher participation rate I consistently get, and that's all that we're looking for.
Right. And I tell them all the time, it's like, let me help you. Help me help you.
Yes.
Like, this ain't even about my questionnaire. This is about you and what you need for this day. Like, if you're not feeling up to it, I know some people will take advantage of it and stuff like
Of
that. And
course.
that's always the kicker. But like, to the kids that are actually taking this seriously and, are one to develop in the correct way and are really bought into our system, I'm doing this so I can or I can help you as as a coach. I can help you and I can rearrange some things. I can twist my program a little bit. I can have some leeway, but I don't know unless you don't tell me or you
Yes.
don't fill out those forms.
Yes. Yeah,
So
exactly. I think that's a huge thing too. I like to joke with my athletes and say I'm not a mind reader, and if I was, I wouldn't be good at it because look, hey, if I don't know, I can't help you, right?
right.
And so if I don't know how you're feeling, like I don't need to know every intricate detail. Just like, hey, I'm feeling good or I'm not. Hey, I'm tired or whatever. Like then we can have more conversation. But like if I don't know how you're feeling, it's hard for me to read your mind because if I was to make a guess, I would guess wrong. and I don't want to do that. And so, let's just do this really fast. It takes 10 seconds and, just go from there, and it makes life so much easier.
Yep.
I think that's really important. If you're a coach and you have done it or you've struggled to do it, or you're struggling currently to do that, just small things go a long way. Small things really, 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 really go a long way. And that's, we just have to do it, unfortunately.
I agree with that, and it's just going back to the athletes, right? It's to help them. It's always that it's their end game. It's not about our program. It's about their performance on the field, and that's just part of it. So
Absolutely. So when you're looking at this data, right? I mean, we'll all say like correlation doesn't equal causation, right? And so, what are top three, top five things you are kind of looking for to say, okay, you know, are you guys using? Let me ask this first. Sorry, are you guys using GPS units for your high schoolers?
we are not.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So that's tough then to say like not to pinpoint it on a practice or anything from that standpoint, but just to have the data, the numbers to show like, okay, hey, like we did do 20% more volume yesterday. To say, okay, that makes sense as to why the next day they may be tired, sore, fatigued, whatever the case may be. I don't know many high schools that use that stuff because probably financially, it's just a lot. It's a lot to get high schoolers to do that. But it's good at what you're doing to say, at least we have some data. I think that's the thing with data is like, it's so objective.
Right.
I'm, I don't care what it is. I just need to know what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I don't care what you put, but I need to know what you put so I can, make adjustments on the fly.
Right. And, I got into our KPIs a lot, with a school that is financially under, right? And, I got to get creative, man. Like, we didn't have the money to pay for Team Builder. And it's just funny because they sponsor my podcast. But, it's, yeah, I had to get creative. And I think that's a lot of coaches as well because, like, I had to make things in Google Sheets that help me bring my point of well, they're getting stronger, they're getting faster, right? So this past year, a couple KPIs that I've really taken a look at. One is being grip strength. So we'll hang from the bars and we'll go for time. So look at like how much time as a team did we go from point A to point B?
Sure.
Is that 12 weeks? Is it 9 weeks? It just depends. One thing we also take a look at is body weight to strength ratios. So it really depends on the sport that you're talking about,
Yep.
or I guess the type of athletes, because football is so like diverse in that way because offensive linemen are trying to get bigger, they're trying to get stronger, and they're trying to get a little bit faster. Your skill athletes are more worried about like staying lean and their skill work. They're not too terribly worried about getting strong, unless they're have someone like you or me in there trying to, kind of force that narrative.
Sure.
But, I take a look at that as well. Big four lifts, power clean, deadlift, trap bar deadlift in particular, squat, and bench press for 3 rep maxes on all those and see what it does to the relationship of their body weight, right? Do we have a high correlation with that? I'm still trying to process that in because like, I don't have a whole lot of data, but I have some to say, okay, here's where we're at right now. Here's the changes that we've seen in our athletes. Their body weight ratios are going up. So they are getting stronger because their lifts are going up. So like just stuff like that. I also switched up my mass velocity running sprints this past off season. So what we're doing right now, we're going from a 5 yard building because I had Dasher. So we are actually the timeout, like laser time everything out. So what we're doing is a 5 yard lead into a 40 yard fly. So it's not the traditional 40, but it does lead into some new exposure for them. And I can see where, our max velocity sprints are at from point A to point B. Going forward, I like to have like a 3 gate system so I can get my 10 yard fly acceleration and then that 40 yard fly altogether. So
you'd be looking at having them do essentially a 50-yard
sprint.
sprint. what are you looking to potentially conclude from that? What are you looking to make a decision on drive? How do you see that as something that what are your thoughts, on that? As like, okay, so if I got this 50-yard fly, let's say for football or whatever, right? Primarily, what are you looking to say, like, with this data? What are we looking to do with it besides just showing an increase, right?
Right. So my thought was the traditional 40-yard stance. Right, your head's in the ground. It's a skill set within itself.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do things. And I think that's just kind of the way I guess my brain and a lot of coaches' brains are. There's got to be a better way to do things. And, for kids that go to camps and stuff like that, I'll teach them that skill set. But for the most part, if you look at athletics across the board, not a whole lot of positions or sports are really in that 3-point stance. Your offensive line, your D line, or one or a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of my thought of like, not a whole lot of sports are in this 3-point stance. So we go from a 2-point stance onward. And that's kind of where that thought originated at. So a couple of things that I thought as well, minimum dose get minimum dose for maximum effort. So we run like 2 or 3 because we'll go until their time unders. So if we go from someone that runs like a 4.7 40-yard fly to a 4.65, I was like, okay, let's get you a couple minutes, rest, go again. And so they'll go again, and if their time's like a 4.68, okay, we'll cut it off there. And that's just for a couple of different reasons. One, I think it exposes them to different, I guess, I hate to say the word like exposures, but it exposes them to different, I guess, stimuluses. Rather than just doing 10-yard flies all the time, which we do a bunch of 10-yard flies. We sprint every single day,
Mm-hmm.
but just very minimal dosage. Um, and it's also a good hamstring vaccine as well. So our hamstrings are actually getting exposed to high velocity running, so they're not going to burst or tear when they are exposed to stuff like that. So kind of different reasons for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, high speed running, I think, is something that athletes need to be doing more frequently of, and doing it often, right? And so, with that, I think high speed running, I think, is amazing. I think it's the best, one of the best things for athletes. I really do, if not the best. Just because there's so much that goes with it. There's, your fastest sprinters are your strongest guys. They may not be weight room strong, but they are your strongest guys. They just express it differently, and typically in a more sport like fashion than my power clean and my back squat or
Right.
whatever, right there and stuff. So yeah, I think high speed running is fantastic. You know, I have, my rule is if they hit a PR, that's it, they're done. Like, so whatever we're timing that day, if they PR, that's it, you're done for the day, because that's now the highest stimulus your body's ever been exposed to. And so if that's the highest, like, think of it as the heaviest 1 RM you're gonna do that you've ever done. And so that's it. Like, why would I need you to do more?
Right.
And so our goal is, like, once you hit a PR, that's a wrap, and you're done for the day on that particular exercise or that sprint or whatever, right? Just because I don't want to risk any potential injury because you just got exposed, and now you're trying harder to potentially beat that. It's like, let's come back, a couple of weeks down the road or next week or whatever. We'll sprint again. If you beat it, great. But now it's, you're gonna try and get close to that, right? And so, but yeah, ours is like top PR. That's it. You're done, from a safety standpoint. And found out to be successful, and people, when they PR, they want to be done anyways.
Right.
I found that, bro. When they PR, they're like, "Coach, I'm done." I'm like, "Yeah, good." Like, that's a wrap.
That's awesome for the kids as well. And they know me well enough to where, like, they run 2 or 3 times. They're like, all right, I'm gonna jog this one so I can get out of it. Stuff like that. But like,
Yeah.
they need to be exposed to high velocity running, high sprints, just because it's more applicable in their actual sport. They get from point A to point B in the shortest amount of time, so you might as well train it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, right? Exactly. And that's where I think games come in though too, talking about what we were talking about earlier. That's where games really come in too, because like you're getting the change of direction, the decel, you're getting the OODA loop process with games as well. And then you can manipulate the variables of it to expose them to higher distance running, higher speed running, based off the parameters in which you set. And it's like you can progressively overload a game literally by changing parameters, which will allow you to emphasize different qualities, and that's your progression for weeks, and that's what you need and want. There you go. There's your progression. Like that's it.
Right. And, having games as, I hate using it as a precursor or warm up
Sure.
but it's such a good warm up for the kids, man. Not just the kids, any athlete really, because they're just being exposed to what you're talking about: acceleration, decel, jump, sprint, change of direction. Instead of coming up with 40 drills in your head, with cones everywhere, and we're going through stations, we can throw them in the game of ultimate frisbee, and they can get all that they need to in probably about 10 minutes.
Literally, we used to play spike ball, like
Ooh,
when this was myself and a couple other coaches. We used to play spike ball as our warm up, and what's crazy is like our warm up would go like 2 hours
that's awesome.
because we would just essentially every day have a spike ball tournament, and it was so much fun. And then we'd go in and lift, and we'd be out there for 3 hours or whatever. But you just get lost in it, and you have so much fun, and you're laughing and joking, and you're doing all this other stuff. I wouldn't, if I'm doing it with a team, like, hey, we got 10 minutes, it's 20 minutes, whatever. But yeah, bro, with coaches, man, we play spike ball for hours, hours, every day, every day. That was our warm up: spike ball, spike ball, spike ball. Or it was after. Hey, we're gonna lift and then spike ball. But typically, it was always spike ball first.
Man, that'd be awesome for the kids as well, because they'll get into it, and then it'll get not violent, but it'll get intense there for a little bit, man. And
Competitive, and
man,
then
that's awesome.
you, but then what you do is you take that competitive component because they're like in the zone, right? Then you go lift. Like, I don't have any numbers to back this up, just visual of me watching them, anecdotal evidence, if you will. The numbers skyrocket because they're like locked in. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if it's proof or not, anecdotal evidence, like I said, but their intent to train just goes up through the roof.
Oh yeah, and that's what you want. You want some carryover into what you're doing. Hey, baby, you want that carryover into what you're doing. You want that carryover into the weight room or into practice. I think if you replace your general warm up, or your A skips, your B skips, your whatever with just a 10-minute, 15-minute game to get them fired up, ready to go. I think practice will be a little bit more productive. And that's kind of going back to almost a sports science talk, right? So, again, there's no evidence, and well, shouldn't say there's no evidence, but there's no data on my end that proves this, but it's just a thought that comes out of if we present them with spike ball before practice, no short pads, just pants, cleats, whatever, and we play spike ball for 10 minutes, will practice be more productive for the next hour, hour and a half?
Sure.
Should be worth looking into.
That would be interesting. That'd be a hard mold to break, I think, from a football standpoint. I don't know. That would be, I don't know. Try and let us know. I think that would be an interesting combination. I do think there is something with meet them where they're at, give them what they want, but then you have to give them what they need to. And so,
Right.
I give them an option, right? Hey, do you want to play games first, or do you want to train, or are we going to train first and play games after? And you decide. You always get a 50-50 split, a 60-40 split, or whatever. Some people are like, let's just get in and get this over with, you know. And I was like, let's play a game. We'll play a
Right.
game right now.
I think it'd be
But
fun during the summer.
uh,
We don't have you don't have to stress to school. You don't have teachers down your neck. You got all the time in the world. It's like let's play spike ball before practice, and then just go to town.
yeah, try it out. I think try it out. You let me know what you think, you know. And I think you could have success with it. I think you got to be careful a little bit, obviously, but I think you could have success with it too. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think it'd be entertaining. You know, I really, really, really do. And whether it's spike ball, there's so many other games you can play though. You know, from that standpoint. But you know, with that, like with the sports science aspect, you know, if you guys are using anybody listening, if you're using GPS, you know, something that is notorious in, I'm going to say, collegiate sports and professional sports is like our warm ups are so long, right? We're out there hours prior to, and we're warming up. And it's like, you know, if you just look at the data from the warm up period, you'll see that some dudes like have accumulated like 50% of a game or accumulated so much just, I'm going to say, junk volume, junk load, all that like such sub max intensities, like very sub max. And it's like, well, what if we only took 25 minutes, but we had a very um, productive and high intentful period of warm up, and then we went and played the game. Like potentiate it just like we do with training, right? We don't need to be out there for 3 hours and accumulating volume. It's like how much more fresh could they be in the fourth quarter and the second half when the games really are decided if maybe we didn't accumulate all of this volume prior to.
I agree with that, and it's the same way with sports. And I've been a football coach for the last 2 3 years, and I've seen where coaches drive them straight to the ground, and they're not fresh on Friday nights, and the injuries are through the roof, and it's kind of like, and we're out there at practice for 5 6 7 hours, and it's gone that long. I will say that was my first year of varsity coaching. We went to a 7 hour practice. So I remember looking at my watch like, man, it's about 4 o'clock. We started at 1. So it's getting kind of late. Was it 5 o'clock, 6? It just kind of going on. I was like,
What are you
man,
doing for that long?
practice, man. And I mean, just like, you know, um,
How you even write a practice script for that long? Legitimately asking.
so the way
You,
that the way it was ran when I was assistant coaching there was like, we went through warm ups. And then if anyone was not present, anyone showed up late, we had to restart the warm ups. And so, yeah, it was crazy, man. And, we went through indie practice, and, individuals was like 30 minutes when it should be like 10. And then practice for team for offense. And that's just for offense. So that took like 2 hours. And so we had to go through defense, and then you got to go through special teams. And it just, yeah.
whoa! If I had
Yeah.
to practice for 7 hours, holy cow! Ooh,
Yeah.
that was brutal. So you guys
Yeah.
fixed that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Eventually, I think eventually, you kind when parents start calling, it's like, hey,
Like,
why is
where are
my
they?
kid not home? Like, yeah, that's probably, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's a telltale sign to be like, hey, we got to cut it. You know, I think practices now, if it's like a 2 hour practice, that's a long practice. That's a long practice. You know,
When
so
my when around that time is when me and my wife got married too, so I get texts about every 30 minutes, like, hey, where you at? Hey, are y'all almost done? Hey, I was like, you know, you
like,
know,
hey, are you alive?
it's like, I just shook my head and was like, yeah,
So
man.
okay, so speaking on that, because I think this is an interesting point. You were an assistant coach at that time, right? How do you then influence or communicate with the head to be like, hey, practice is too long, obviously. How did you guys go about that process?
I That's such a good question and a hard question to answer at the same time, man. Like, I did mention to him that, like, hey, my wife was pretty irritated that I got home at 7:38 when I should have been home at like 4 at best, or 5, 4:35, at the very latest. And I coach's like, oh, I just want everything perfect, and he's a big perfectionist guy, and I have a lot of respect for him just because like he just wanted it perfect. In his mind, he's just doing what he needed to do in order to be perfect. But on the reality side of things, like on my side, like as your assistant coaches, you're keeping us away from our families and stuff like that, man. So I try to talk to him a little bit more of the family aspect than the technical aspect of it, right? So I mentioned like my wife, like, look, she's not seeing me at home. I need to be home with her. I love coaching, I love football, but I love my wife more. Like, I'm not going to sacrifice my marriage just to coach football, man, or be in the weight room for however long you want to do that too. So that's kind of the approach I've gone with it. Um, going in pissed off is probably the worst thing to go in with, right? Why are you having this blanky blank long practice and whatever? So yeah.
So let me ask, how long did it take for you guys to cut down from, let's say, a 7 hour practice to a more reasonable time? Like, let's say 2 hours, hour and a half, right? Even 3 hours, I think, is way too long. But like, how long did it take for you guys to kind of? I get like, I want to be perfect. Yeah, well, nothing in the world is perfect. So,
And that was the thing too with the kids that we got too. Like, we give them good about hour and a half, and they're checked out.
oh, then
Much less the next 5.5 hours after the hour and a half. So, I'm sorry. What was the original question? I
I
lost it.
mean, yeah. How did you guys, get it to be reduced? So you took a approach of like, hey, family, parents obviously calling. What did you guys kind of do to get it from a 7 hour practice to a 2 hour? Did you sit down and kind of have a conversation with them where it's like, hey, like if a kid shows up, we don't need to restart warm up. We can just get him warmed up. Or if the offense is going, the defense can be doing something else at the same time. Or like, how did you guys get it to be condensed to a reasonable time?
So I kind of use that as motivation for the kids as well. It's like, hey, do you want to get out here at like 4:35 instead of being out here at 7? Let's kind of move through things. I know we've been running the same system since spring ball. Like, it. I trust you that you know it, but let's just kind of get through some of these things here. If we're in Indy, let's just go rapid fire. Let's kind of pick up the tempo a little bit. You know what you're doing. You know the drills. We do a routine thing. So I think that helps too. And it helped the kids as well. It's like, okay, I want to get out here. I don't want to be here till I got homework. I got,
Yeah.
food to eat. I got to eat. Like, what athlete eat? Well, I shouldn't say that, but still.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's interesting because I think sometimes a lot of people, and I'm going to say maybe particularly in the high school world, um, struggle with that. You know, a head coach maybe wants it a particular way, which is fine because he's the head guy. But I think everybody can make their agreements that a 7 hour practice is way too long. People, 3 hours, I think too, is like you're really pushing it. Like you're really, really, really pushing it. Like you're just like, okay. So I think a lot of people struggle with the aspect of like, how do I approach the head guy on, hey, like, can we cut things down? Like, how can we be more efficient? Going out there and doing things for time doesn't always mean you're going to do them well. And then the aspect of like you're saying, like the kids check out. You probably have their attention for 90 minutes max, right? And then after that, they're whispering like, "Hey man, like how much longer do you think we have? What period are we in? How many periods are for today?" Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're asking those questions as well. And then you'll get probably some attitude too, because they're probably like, "Dude, like when am I gonna go?" So I think a lot of coaches potentially may struggle with that. On like, how do I even approach a head coach to potentially adjust practice, right?
Yeah, and you know, being just the assistant, and you're on the low tone, I don't know, on the totem pole, right? Who am I to question the head coach's decision of having these long practices? It's like, well, look, your athletes are tired. They're tired of you. They're tired of being in pads, and they're exhausted, right? Like, just do you want to win on Friday night or not?
Right.
That's the huge thing with all sport coaches, right? Do you want to win on Friday night or do you not? It's like your athletes are tired. They're probably gonna get hurt if you don't let them rest. It's like let them go, man. And
Yeah.
how do you put that in nicer words than you're wearing down your kids. So
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it too. Is like you're really wearing kids down, and so yeah, it's really interesting. It's that's tough. That's tough. I mean, I feel like everybody's kind of gone through that struggle, um, and stuff. But man, do you have anything you'd love to wrap up on? What point do you want to drive home?
I think sports should be fun. I think that if you are in any kind of form of sport, it should be fun. No matter what sport that actually is, if it's track, if it's football, if it's soccer, if it's the collegiate, if it's middle school, if it's pee wee, if it's flag football, if it's the freaking professionals. I think the underlying factor is that you gotta have fun in your sport. Now, how we incorporate that into our jobs is the main point, right? So, how do we incorporate data and fun, and how to incorporate all that into a program? How do we keep kids back in the high school? How do we keep them coming back to our weight room? Are you enjoyable to be around?
Mm-hmm.
Are you creating a culture of excellence through things like having fun activities, but also getting results? So I think that's the kind of drive that I have right now, being a high school strength coach, man, and just like it's it's fun, it's challenging some days, and these kids will challenge you. I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't gonna lie to anyone. It's there's some days I'm like, man, what am I doing here? This is what did I get myself into? But like at the same time, man, it's rewarding, it's fun. It's awesome, man. And I truly think this is one of the best professions. Yeah, we might be a little underpaid, and yeah, you might be working a little bit more hours than what you're getting paid for. But at the end of the day, to see development and to see the drive being built in some of these athletes is incredible, man.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I think that's why a lot of us get into it in the first place, right? Is the development is to impact people. I think that's such a huge component and driver. I think that's not just strength and conditioning, but life, in life. And I just want to say thank you for your time today. I want to say thank you for what you're doing. Where can people find you online? And then tell the name of your podcast so they can go and watch that as well.
Yeah, so I'm more active on Twitter nowadays, so you can find me at Coach Rasberry. I post everything on there from thoughts, opinions, and sports science and strength stuff and Google Sheet stuff, and everything in between there. If you want to listen into any of the episodes that I got on my podcast as well, you can go find that on Conjugate Chats podcast on Apple or not Apple Music, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, just like Kendrick's podcast here. And Kendrick, I do want to say thank you for letting me be on here and share some thoughts and opinions. A short little Google Sheets Excel debate there for a little bit. But what you're doing here is awesome. He just hit 1,000 downloads, man, and that's a huge milestone. I remember when the Conjugate Chats hit that 1,000 download mark, man, and it's incredible. And it sparks the fire inside of you, man, and it's incredible. And it's awesome, man. And what you're putting on here is awesome, man. And just from one podcaster, one strength coach to another, man, just keep it up, man. Keep going.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I really appreciate that, and thank you much. And for those that don't know, his podcast is way bigger than mine. So go listen to his, and he's doing a great job as well. And so appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everything that you're doing, guys. Look, if you got a laugh out of this, if you love Google Sheets or hate Google Sheets, whatever the case may be, look, share it with a friend. That's all that we ask. If you got entertained, if you got educated, if you got some value out of this, if you like, what, I resonate with that struggle because I have the same one. Or how would I do a sports science approach? Or what is even important to me? guys, reach out to Coach Rasberry. I think he has some great stuff for you guys. If you have questions, drop them in on the YouTube that we'll post on this. Okay, if you listen on Spotify, share this with a friend that you got benefit from this, somebody that you think will benefit from this as well, because that's how the show grows. Like I said, we're growing, we're continuing to grow. So do us a huge favor, share this with a friend, and we would much, much, much appreciate it. And Jonmarc will say thank you again, and then we'll catch everybody next time. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate y'all listening, and we'll have more guys coming to you guys real soon. Thanks, guys.